Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Um, Looks like we got 81 people here right now. A few more might trickle in throughout the evening, but I think we are going to go ahead and get started. So I would love to introduce to you a person who needs no introduction, Miss Sylvia Massy. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Absolutely. I love being here.
Awesome. So tonight we're going to go over microphones, and there's going to be a long Q&A at the end. So please write your questions down throughout and get those ready for the end. You'll all have a chance to get your questions answered. So definitely be remembering those. But I think we're going to go ahead and get started.
Okay. Well, my name's Sylvia Massy, and I, not too long ago, wrote a book with my partner, and here it is right here. It was called Recording Unhinged. And it's kind of a fun book about unconventional recording techniques, and it's done to spur your imagination. Anyway, our publisher loved the book so much that he asked us to do another book, and he wanted a book on vintage microphones. And now I've been collecting my whole life, but and I thought, well, heck, I'm going to be the perfect person to write this book because I know so much about microphones and I use them every day. But the more I looked into the writing of this book, the more I heard from people that basically that it just can't be done. That's what my friends told me. They said, no, that's impossible. You can't do a book about microphones, vintage mics, because there are so many. And so I started researching mics, and I got very familiar with the high flyers, the Neumanns. I went to the Neumann factory in Germany. I went to the Gefell factory in Germany, and went to the Shure headquarters in outside of Chicago. And one year I was at Gearfest right there in Indiana, in Fort Wayne. And I took an excursion. My partner Chris said, "Hey, go drive up and see this guy in Milwaukee. He has a mic museum." So I drove up there to meet this fellow, and his name is Bob Paquette, and he has the world's largest microphone museum. And my mind was blown because here's microphones that I'd never seen before, because typically I'm using Neumanns and, the AKGs and a lot of the European mics and the US mics like the Electro Voice and Shure mics. But here were mics that I'd never even known about. And I swore to Bob that I'd be back to take photos of his collection. But before that happened, unfortunately, he passed away. And I was in touch with his family, who now needed to find a home for these microphones, and they were selling them. And I thought, well, it would be a shame to break up this whole collection, because he had over 2,000 microphones from all over the world. He'd been collecting them for 50 years with all the documentation. So my partner and my partner Chris was the one who went there actually and negotiated a deal for us to get this collection. So now I had to start writing the book all the way from scratch, because everything I do about microphones is basically I'm starting from scratch again. So anyway, today I can share with you some of the knowledge that I've learned in actually researching each one of these particular microphones to see what they are, because they were only in his collection for an important reason, the historical reason. And as time has gone on, I'm finding out so many things that I never knew before. So the collection is here at my studio now, and we're still unpacking, honest to God. There's so many microphones, and I've selected microphones that will go for sale. So some of those will be sold, but the basic core of the collection will keep intact. And I'll show you some of these today. So let's start from the beginning and talk about the development of microphones. First of all, the first microphone basically was designed by Alexander Graham Bell. He got the patent for it. And I have a replica of the first telephone microphone that he developed. And this is it right here. It's a liquid transmitter. So these microphones, the early microphones were called transmitters because they would transmit a voice from one room to another, basically. And this was the first electronic transmitter. And it's basically got a cone here that collects the sound. And there's a membrane on the bottom here that vibrates with the sound. And then on that membrane is a tiny pin. And let me see if I could get that up close enough so you can see there's a tiny pin touching that membrane. And inside this little thimble is an acid. That's the liquid that would vibrate and transmit the audio. So this was a crazy big, important invention. And immediately on him patenting that invention, other inventors went about improving the design. So one of the first new designs was made by this fellow, David Edward Hughes. And now David Edward Hughes took Alexander Graham Bell's idea and improved it by using a different type of material. And here, this is actually from the Paquette collection, Bob Paquette. This is a David Edward Hughes microphone from 1878, honest to God. And if you take a good close look at this one, maybe I can get a better camera on it. Let's see, let's try. Is it that one or this one? Here we go. So you can see here, it's a wooden box with a kind of a carbon pencil in it. And now I thought, well, when I first opened up the box with this in it, I thought, well, something's missing. But Chris, in fact, told me, and here's Chris right now. Hi, Chris. Hi. Thanks for the coffee. He's off camera. Anyway, Chris said, hey, no, that's actually the part of the microphone. And so I did some research. And in fact, this is the first type of carbon microphone, which was a carbon pencil is what it was called. It's a hard piece of compressed carbon that's carved in a way that it is suspended in this little loose fitting here. And when you close the front and you talk into it, it vibrates that little pencil. And David Edward Hughes had designed it in such a way that you would amplify it with a, let me see if I get this picture up here. Yeah, you would amplify it by connecting that to 3 batteries. And you can see on the table there, the 3 batteries. And then you would have an earpiece that you could listen to what was happening. I mean, this is way back then, right? 1878. And this was just one of the most amazing things that was happening. And again, people improved on this design immediately. And by 1880, there was a new type of mic technology using carbon, but they used granular carbon. So it was more like sand. And then these particles could move around really easily, and it would collect more audio. And so this is the basic granular carbon microphone that became very popular in the teens and in the 20s, all the way through the 20s. This was what you would find for microphones, and everyone would sing in them and the radio shows. And it was really a basic design. And here's a photo, a really nice photo of Gloria Swanson. And sometimes they would have 2 of these on the stands just for a louder signal, or just with one as a backup. But that was what microphones were in the teens and the 20s. Now in the 20s, there were a lot of new technologies. But before we move on to them, I just wanted to say one last thing about carbon mics. Carbon mics are still popular today. Your telephones, your telephone handset, a lot of times in a landline phone, you will have a carbon button that's used to as a microphone still today. So that technology is just rugged and it always works. It's not the highest quality, but it's cheap and easy to manufacture. So that is still popular today. But then in the 20s, there was a lot of new technology. And one of these technologies was the condenser mic. And the condenser mic was, it needed to be powered. The capsule needed to be powered. So it was a bit more cumbersome because designs in the 20s, a condenser mic looked like this. And I'll pick this up. It's very heavy and awkward, but this is one of the earliest condenser mics. And you can see it has a whole power supply here to power the capsule. That's not even to power the amplify the signal. That's just to power the capsule. And so these types of mics became really important in high-end recording and broadcasting. And they were oftentimes the first mics to be used in the talkies, because as soon as talking pictures came in, they needed high quality microphones to use in filmmaking. This fellow, E.C. Wente, he was the one who developed the technology for condenser mics. And then the condenser mics are still very, very popular today. In the 30s, the Germans started making their own version of condenser mics. And then these became very popular. And around the world, this is basically the first Neumann mic. George Neumann did invent an earlier carbon type of microphone, but this was his big breakthrough right here, is this condenser mic. This is the CMV3. And a really special thing about this is that you could remove this capsule and replace it with a different type of capsule, depending if you wanted a cardioid pattern or an omni pattern. So it was really versatile and just built like a tank. And let me see, can I get that back on? I'll just do that later. All right. So that was the Germans. And then the German development of condensers improved. And in the 50s, they were making these mics, and these are just precious. And I use these for production today. This one is a U47, or is it a U48? Let's see. No, this is a U48. The U48 was this style of mic that had the choice between cardioid and figure eight. And then you can see that little emblem on there. Maybe you can see it here. I'll change cameras and I bet you can see it this way. Here, see that little emblem? It says, it shows a figure eight. And then the other selection is for cardioid. And you can see that. And that's the only difference between a 47 and a 48, is that the 48 has figure eight, the 47 has omni and cardioid. Anyway, this is like the mics that Frank Sinatra used for all his vocals, and the Beatles, they would use these all the time too. So it's very, very popular. And still popular today. Boy, if you can find a vintage one, that's great. But even, the new Telefunken company is making this style of mic today too. It's a U.S. company now. It's not a German company. Let me get back to the right camera. Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, are we doing okay? Great. Okay. So let's see. So these mics became very popular, especially the condensers. The presidents were always using the latest technology. And so you can see here, Winston Churchill was using a condenser. That's a Western Electric condenser, like a tombstone with all the electronics in that base and then a capsule on top. And then next to that is one of those early carbon mics again. Here's, oh God, I'm just talking and it's not, you're not even seeing it. Hang on a second. Here, let me go. Here's Amelia Earhart, and there's Winston Churchill. And let's see, Calvin Coolidge. Here we go. So I'm going to move forward here again. And let's see what we got here. Yeah. Amelia Earhart, she was doing a broadcast to Antarctica with this condenser mic at WGN. And then the dictators also loved these mics, especially the German dictator who, you know, that was, they call it a Hitler mic. Some people do. Anyway, so moving on, in the 20s, other technology was being developed, including the dynamics. And now this is fascinating because here the dynamic is a microphone that doesn't need external power, and it's really rugged. It just uses magnetic energy to create the signal. And the dynamic mic was basically developed by Captain Round at the Marconi Labs in the UK. And so the first dynamic mics were big and bulky, and they were being used by the royal family. This is, you can see that box on the table in front of King Henry the Fifth, King George V, I'm sorry. And he was using this microphone, which I documented at EMI in London. This is the actual mic that was being used. And I'll give you a better view of this because it's really quite special. So the box was a cover made of filigree silver, and the mic would sit on this marble platform, and then he would speak into it. It had a giant magnet, and that's what the cover looked like when it was just being used. They would keep the cover on it, and it was acted as a windscreen. Wow, super nice windscreen. Anyway, the basic mic was this, and we have one of these in this museum. I couldn't believe that we have this in the museum, and that's an original Marconi round Sykes microphone, and that's the first dynamic mic that was made. But then that also became improved over time, and then the next generation that was very popular was the Western Electric, the 618. And that's what you see here. All those mics are 618s. Basically, it became the latest and greatest technology. Everyone put aside the carbon mics. No one wanted to touch carbon mics anymore. And the condensers just became kind of a hassle because you had to power them. So, but here you could use these dynamic mics and not have to power them up. They were rugged. They took weather well, and so they became very popular. And then the company Shure made a very, very popular dynamic mic. They started making several different types of dynamics that were very popular, including this one, which is nicknamed the Elvis mic, and that's the Shure 55. And that is so iconic for so many photos of singers from the 50s in particular. I think that one came out in the 40s, and they still make a similar one today called the 55S, and the S stands for small. So it's a smaller version of that big birdcage mic. And then dynamics also, all the presidents use dynamics. So here's another type of dynamic. This was Electro Voice, which was just coming up. And that's an Electro Voice 666 mic. And that was very popular with presidents as well. Robert Kennedy here is using an Austrian. Is it Austrian? No, that's a German mic. The Sennheiser 421. And I have one of those right here. This is still being made today and very popular. I use this pretty much every session, especially for drums and bass. And that's what it looks like. The 421 dynamic mic. It's great for drums. The thing about these mics as they were being developed, some of the earlier models are actually really good and they're kind of secret weapons. Like that 421 mic, before the 421 came around, this is the Sennheiser mic, the MD21, and it has a similar kind of streamlined shape. But this is also a really great production mic, and you might find one for inexpensive on the internet or something, just because people don't know what they are. So look out for those. What's going on, Chris?
Just watching you.
Oh, you're watching me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm having a good time here. Well, I don't know. You can come over here and just say hello, would you?
How many people are watching this?
I think there's like 100 people.
All right. Hey, everybody, I'm Chris.
That's Chris.
Hi.
Yeah,
Oh,
Chris.
boy.
Chris. Oh, yeah.
Hiding.
Okay, you can go now. Sorry about that. Yeah, Chris. Chris and I wrote that book, and we're still and Chris. It's because of Chris that we have this mic collection. Yes, thank you, Chris. So, okay, but I want to talk a little bit more about these dynamic mics. All right, there's a couple other dynamics that are kind of sleepers that you might want to look out for. One is this crazy thing. Take a look at that. It's round and it has a flat thing on the top. Actually, that's a flat screen that creates a field so that it's more of a cardioid pattern instead of an omni. But this is a dynamic. It's the Western Electric Western Electric. What is it? Oh boy. See, I'm still learning, right? Is it not a 420? What is it? Hang on. I know. So that one is the 630. That's what it is. It's the Western Electric 630. They nickname it the ball and biscuit because it's a ball with a biscuit on it. So this one, if you find it, you might even be able to get it for like $100. Watch out for these. These are great. And they were first developed in the 30s. This was one of the first popular dynamics. And there was another dynamic I wanted to show you. In fact, this one just came in today, and this is blowing my mind. All right. Someone sent me this mic, and I just opened up the package today. And here it is. He says he found it at the dump. It was at the dump in a pile of garbage, this microphone. All right. It's a little rusty, and it fits into this ring as a suspension, but part of the ring is missing. But I just opened it up. I want to just see if it works. It's the testament to dynamic mics. You can put them through hell and they'll still work, right? Like the SM57 Shure mic is the big joke is that you can run over it with a truck and it's still going to work. And in fact, I have tried that, and in fact, it does work. So let's actually listen to this. Now I've just hooked it up to my rig here. I have a rig on my table, and I'm going to put on some headphones. Check. I'm going to turn down my RE20, which is another beautiful dynamic mic. And I'm going to turn up. Oh, hey, this thing works. Hang on. How about that? Check. Well, it sounds a little thin. This is an AKG D25. And in fact,
this particular model was used on a lot of early Beatles records, and it was used as a drum mic, in particular a kick drum. Check. That's the back. Check, check. Oh, this is the front. Check, check. How about that? Wow. I'm so excited. Now I just have to restore it. It's all rusty. But that is a testament to the ruggedness of the dynamic.
Check, check, check. Yeah, it could be thrown away in the dump and still work. Wow, that's cool. Another one I wanted to show you is this pair of mics here, which is got incredible history because these are presidential mics. These are actual presidential mics that were sent by the historian at Shore in Chicago for the museum. And in fact, they're SM57s. They're $100 microphones. And they put two of them on this mounting. This is the actual mounting. And these are the actual mics that were used from Clinton, Bush, the second Bush, and Obama White Houses. And then Trump wanted a different kind of situation. He likes the gooseneck with one mic on it. But I think probably Uncle Joe will get back to this kind of arrangement. You'll see this type of Shure arrangement in the new speeches. Anyway, we're so lucky to have this here. These mics, isn't it funny that they don't fool around when they're capturing the president's speeches. They get the cheapest, most reliable microphone that you can get, and that's the SM57. I have to say, SM57 is probably my favorite mic. I mean, I have a lot of favorite mics, but if I was on a desert island and I had to use only one microphone, it would be SM57 or a 58. All right, where were we? We're talking about dynamics. Okay, let's move on now. Another technology that was introduced in the 20s and especially in the 30s were ribbon mics. And ribbon mics, the first ones were developed in Germany, and it was developed by Siemens. And this is one of those Siemens mics. Here's Joseph Stalin using one. We have one in the collection also, but I think that the mics that RCA made in the 30s are iconic and very important. And they were developed by this fellow, Harry F. Olson. And he developed some of the most recognizable designs. And the Paquette collection, or the museum, has his original prototypes. And I just have to show you one of these. This is just amazing. It's such a piece of important history. And let me move cameras. Here we go. This is the prototype for what became the RCA 44 ribbon mic. And I'll show you another view of it here. This is it right here. Look at that. All right. So you can see this iconic shape, right? Well, this is the prototype, and it actually works, amazingly enough. But this was the production model. Here's an RCA 44. It's a huge magnet, super heavy, and you'll recognize that shape. It's an iconic, famous microphone that was used all through the 40s in particular. And I'll show you a couple of photos of them being used here. Yeah, Glenn Miller and Ronald Reagan and Betty Davis. Very iconic. This guy, Major Bose, had the #1 radio show in the 30s. So that was pretty important. These mics were important. And I just want to give you an idea of what this sounds like, because seems like ribbon mics aren't as popular today, but in fact, I think they should be because they sound fantastic. And let me just give you a sample of a few of these things. Putting away this dynamic here. Let me put it over here. Thanks for being so patient with me. I got such a mess here. It's super fun doing this though. And thanks for your patience. Okay, now I'm going to hook up this RCA 44. It has an XLR out already put on it. Okay, there we go. And when you connect it to a power supply, you don't want to have phantom power on it. Actually, the mic pre that I'm using is a Focusrite ISA1, and it's a mic pre that has you can turn on the phantom power, or you can leave it off. And so I'm leaving it off because phantom power will damage the microphone. So let me put my headphones on here and let's see if we can get this guy to work here. Okay, I'm going to turn off my RE20. Check. Oh, it's a little bit noisy, but let's see. Check. Ooh, wow. Check. Oh, that's got a lot of good low end. Dang. All right. Wow. Okay, let me turn that down. Wow, that is an amazing mic for low end. And you can imagine all those radio guys were using these things, and they would have big booming voices. But then these types of mics were being developed all over the world. And in Russia, they had their own types of mics. This is an Octava, one of the Russian manufacturers for ribbon mics. And I always thought this was incredibly beautiful. You know, I call it the pistachio. And let's just take a listen to this one, because it's just, it has that ribbon sound, you know, it's so nice, and no phantom power. Okay, here we go. Oh, this one's a little noisy too. All right. Oh, but this, hello. Oh, see, that's just a really nice sounding mic. Great for voice. And I see it picks up a different kind of hum depending on where it is. It could be the lighting that's causing that. Anyway, they're very sensitive. All right. Down. Hello. I have one more ribbon mic that I want to show you. And this is another RCA, but this is one of those RCAs that you might find in someone's garage or something, you know, because it doesn't look that special. This is a BK11 mic, BK11A, I believe. And this is it's a junior. In fact, they kind of nickname it the 44 Junior because it has that profile, but it's much smaller than that big old honkin' 44. So just listen to this. This is one of my favorite mics. It's definitely my favorite ribbon, and I like a lot of ribbons, but here we go. All right, turn down my RE20. Check, and see how quiet it is? Oh, wow. This is a great mic. This would be a great mic for broadcasting, I think, right? If I wanted to do my own podcast. Wow, that's a great mic. RCA BK11, no hum. I know for certain that there's extra shielding in the bass, so that could be part of the reason why it's so beautifully quiet. Okay, so that's a high quality mic. If you can find one of those, wow, you score. It's RCA Junior. All right. So we have one more type of microphone to look at, and that would be the crystals. And now this really surprised me when I first learned about the crystals, because, you know, first of all, I didn't realize that, you know, you could yell at a rock basically, or, you know, well, a burnt stick. You're yelling at a burnt stick, and it's actually a microphone. Well, in fact, the crystal microphones are piezoelectric, and they're made from this type of crystal. It's either a quartz crystal or what this is, which is a salt crystal. It's called Rochelle salt. And that's actually the material that these microphones are made with. And the way it's done is it's a very, very thin slice of a crystal. And let me show you what that looks like. This is the brush. This is the father and son brush family who developed the crystal piezoelectric technology, and they developed it in their basement of their mansion. And crazy people and crazy mad scientists. Anyway, here's these little crystals that are sliced ever so thin and delicately, and then they're placed into a holder. And you can see in this diagram, there's a square that is holding the crystal in place. And then what happens is a diaphragm is very carefully connected to the edge of that crystal. And as the diaphragm moves with sound vibrations, it bends the rock. It bends that crystal ever so slightly. And when the crystal is bent, it puts out a very small electrical charge. That's piezoelectricity. So you yell at the rock puts out a spark, and then you translate that into an audio signal. It's just like, I had no idea that that's what crystal mics are made from, rocks. Okay, but the crystal mics, and there were so many beautiful crystal mics made. This is one that was made by Brush. This is another Brush. They're unusual shapes and very space age in a lot of ways. But there was a big problem with these mics, is that they were very sensitive to weather and humidity. And when they got kind of a dampness to them, they would, the little holder that the crystal was in would kind of explode, and they would lose the ability to transmit sound. So that right there is a photograph of a crystal that has been damaged by humidity. And I suppose it's because it's made out of salt rock that it just doesn't last. So you can find some amazing crystal mics, but in fact, they may not work. And there's a reason for it, because there's kind of a life to these microphones. They're beautiful, but they may not work. One of the most popular crystal mics is a bullet that, I'm sorry, I don't have one here, but that is a very popular harmonica mic. And those are crystals. And if you find a good one, keep it dry. There is newer technologies that used ceramic instead of crystal, which has more longevity. This is another crystal. Look at this unusual thing. This is by Turner, the American microphone company, Turner. And in fact, the Brush family, they licensed out the technology to all kinds of different microphone companies. So Ecstatic and Turner and Shure, they all had their crystal mics that they were using the Brush technology. Anyway, okay. What else did I want to talk about that? Let's see. And oh yeah, there's one of the Brush mics being used. And yeah, so that is pretty much an overview of the world of microphones. And the book is being written. It's going to take some time, because basically we had to kind of start over, and we have a lot more work to do. Oh, I did want to show you one crazy thing. The creative technology in microphones. Someone had a sense of humor with this one, and take a look at that. This is an AKG DX11 mic. And the thing about this mic is it comes with its own built-in reverb, and the reverb is made by a spring. So if you're familiar with spring reverb, guitar amplifiers use spring reverb. Sometimes they build in a little, they call it a reverb tank, which has some springs in it that when you run audio through it and vibrate the spring, then it has this kind of shimmery reverb sound. So these people here at AKG developed a mic with a spring reverb built in, and I have a couple of these, and one of them I've opened up so you can actually see the spring in the bass here. It's right here. And so I just want to give you a sample of what this thing sounds like. It's so funny. And this, again, this is a type of mic that you can find relatively inexpensive when you do find them. Okay, but they don't really sound that great, but they're fun, right? Okay, turn down my RE20.
Check, check, check. Okay, here it is. This is the DX11. And now I'm going to turn up the, oh, here we go. I'm going to turn up the spring reverb, and you can hear the difference. Check, 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 check. Oh, wow. Now I'm in a reverb. Isn't that silly? Hey, check, 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 check. Oh, man. See, it has a little adjustment there, so you can add as much spring reverb, cheesy spring reverb as you want. So I always thought that was really cool.
All right. Anyway, I'd love to take your questions, or we could talk about anything like some tips on recording. I've got plenty to talk about too. You just start throwing some questions at me, and let's start a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Was it okay?
Oh yeah, it was more than
okay. Because
so
I'm just having fun. You know, this is my passion so much, and you know, a new mic comes in the mail, and it's just like, yay! You know, it's all covered with rust and stuff, and it's just like, yes, so fun.
Well, you have a couple questions coming in so far. And
Okay.
We'll start with Caitlin Pate. She's a student here at IU. So Caitlin's asking, what is the most extensive restoration you've had to do?
Oh, and a restoration. Wow. Well, let me think about that. It's still being done. And the biggest challenge of having a collection like this is just finding connectors. Like, for instance, this big guy over here, this is a Western Electric 53A, or there's another kind called the 47A. It has this kind of connector here that, heck, if I have not been able to find this connector, and I'm hesitant to cut the cable and put a different connector on it, because I just don't want to do that. So that is the biggest challenge, is finding connectors, because every manufacturer had a different type of connector. Like these brush mics have a 3-hole connector, but it's not a, let me see if I can show you that. Yeah, there. And it's not an XLR. There, you can see it. It's not an XLR. This is a different kind of 3-pin connector. And they're all different. Like this one, this beautiful Altec condenser mic, which is called a Coke bottle. I'm gonna give you a better view of that. This is called the Coke bottle. This kind of connector, again, is like something that I have to find somewhere, you know. So that's the biggest challenge to restoring these old mics, is finding the connectors. But if they're inexpensive, you just cut it up and make it work, you know. But I will try to find the original to begin with before I start cutting cables. Anyway, I suppose that's it. I think they're all being restored in some way.
Awesome. Okay, another question from Matt Teen, another IU student.
Okay.
He is asking, with so many mics, there can't be many new features or sounds to be had. So what was your most recent mic purchase, and why did you choose to get it?
You know, you're right about that. There's not much since the 30s new in the way of microphones. Actually, the newest technology is phantom power. And that was where you would get power sent to the microphone from the XLR cable. that happened in the 60s. I think the late 50s was the first time that the Germans first started using a phantom power that sent the signal, the power down the mic cable. So yeah, I still buy mics. I have one here that I really love. This is a new condenser by a Russian company called Soyuz. And this is what it looks like. That's the guy. It's gorgeous. And it sounds amazing. It has a power supply separate. But this is it's not even that much. And when you compare it to like one of those vintage U48s or U47s, the price is just a fraction of that, because if you are looking for a U47 vintage, you're going to pay maybe $12,000. This one I think you can get for $3,000, and it's a brilliant vocal mic. It's a very high-end mic for a lot of uses. But I've put this up against the 47s, and actually I kind of like it better. It's a little more sparkly. So that, I would say, is my latest happiest purchase recently. But beyond that, I haven't really been buying mics lately because I kind of got a lot. I brought 60 microphones from the museum to a session in Hollywood a couple weeks ago, where I was recording Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters. And so there was mics that, I'd been itching to use on a project. So here was, a great project, and I recorded a track with each one of the mics on it so I could really listen to see what they were doing, So I'll bring a new mic now and then, but honestly, I got so many old ones, and they're all good, and they all have their own thing,
Awesome. We have a guest from France, and they're asking, amazing collection. How many of those mics are in working order?
Ooh, I'd say maybe half. The other half are untested because of the cabling and the connectors that are I'm unable to find a connector for. But there's more that I'm going to try to revive. Like, here's a very interesting story of some mics that just came in yesterday, and let me show you. This is such a cool story. So this fellow, he inherited these two microphones from his father, and he really didn't know what they were. He got them from his father and realized, oh, these are microphones, and they're kind of in pieces. But this was the original box that they came in, that his father had put them in. And as he pulled the foam out from the box, and, he removed the mics and he pulled the foam out, and there was a stick of live dynamite in the bottom of this box. No, who knows why, but they had to evacuate the whole block and have the police and the fire company come in and remove the dynamite, because it was really dangerous. So, but he sent me these mics, and I just tested one, and they don't work. Unfortunately, this is going to be a project for me, but I'm kind of excited about it, because here's one of them, and it's made by a company called American, and it's the D9A. Yeah, D9A. And it looks like a ribbon mic, right? If I put this up against a ribbon mic, it's very similar to a ribbon mic. And I think it on purpose was meant to look like a ribbon mic. But in fact, when you open it up, it has two capsules that are dynamics. And I have to do some more research, but I think one is tuned for a certain frequency, and the other, and there's like a crossover, so that you get a full frequency with 2 different dynamic capsules. But isn't that something? Too bad they don't work. I'll start digging into this one and figure out why. It can't be that wrecked, you know. But you know, I hope they don't like blow up. But yeah, so like there are a lot of mics that are working. I'd say about half of them do work, but then there's these kind of things that it'll take some time before I can get them going, but I'm going to work on them one at a time.
Awesome.
Thanks for the question.
Another question from a student, Max Dabilla. He's asking, are there any specific microphones you don't have and wish to obtain?
Oh my God. Yes. Well, the Holy Grail microphone is a microphone that's badged Telefunken, that is the ELAM 251. And it was a mic that was built by AKG and marketed by Telefunken. And it is the Holy Grail. For some reason, it's like the nutty how expensive they are. So they'll be, you know, $18,000 to $20,000 for this old mic from the 50s. And I don't have one. Another really, really special mic is a Neumann M49, and that's a condenser that is a large diaphragm condenser, and it's kind of a squat looking Neumann mic, but it usually has a big yoke, but those are just amazing sounding. They are so incredibly beautiful, and someday, you know, that, you know, I got time. In the meantime, I've got plenty to play with.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah.
A question from the head of our audio department here at IU, Conrad Strauss. He asks, when you're finished with the book, do you have plans to recreate the Paquette Museum and publicly display the microphones?
Yeah, in fact, we started building shelving for the museum, and it's within a studio that we're building right now. And the studio has an Atmos system in it. So it's really my mix room. And I'll be doing a lot of Atmos in here. We're just putting in the speakers now. It's all Genelec speakers. And I have this big horseshoe console thing with a Rupert Neve Designs cars and a Loop Trotter 500 series desk, and then some other weird old things. But so you can imagine that's the center of the room, and then all around the outside of the room are microphones on all the walls and hanging from the ceiling and everything. So it will be available for the public to see, but it is in kind of a private studio, so I'm not sure how we're going to do it yet. I think that we have to, it'll take time before we can really invite everyone over, and plus COVID too. So yeah, can't wait till that's over.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, another question from a guest. They are asking, as a soon-to-be university graduate, what advice would you give to a young woman trying to break into the industry as an engineer and producer? How do I make myself stand out from other young professionals as someone worth hiring?
Well, you're asking the right question. Stand out. So you might want to specialize in one thing, right? It's good that you know if you want to do engineering, then you want to know that craft as much as you can. But specializing in one thing in particular, like if you play an instrument, let's say you're a violinist and you can do string arrangements, wow, that is a skill that will that'll have you stand out. It also helps if you have your own equipment, you can get started much sooner. And if you do have your own equipment, I would say solicit different artists that you want to work with. Like, keep track of what's happening with music online, who's active, and then ask them through just sending messages if they wouldn't mind if you mixed one of their songs for free, and then hopefully they'll give you some files and you can do a mix, and then you can send it to them and just offer your services for free. I still will do that today. Like if there's a band that I really want to work with, I'll just knock on their door, their management's door, and I'll say, hey, send me some files. I'll mix them and you can do whatever you want with it. If you want to use the mix, or not use the mix, it doesn't matter. And then it really helps develop those relationships that you need. What you want to do is get a client to trust you. And sometimes that takes time. So if you are, and I don't know where you're living, but if you are in the Midwest somewhere, let's say, you might consider moving to Los Angeles. And that just sounds like a big upheaval. Well, you can try Nashville too. It seems like it's good to get into the environments where there's a lot of people kind of they're trying really hard to get ahead. And then what you do is you get into these places like at Los Angeles, and then be patient. Take a job that you don't necessarily think will help you, and just stick with it. Give it 2 years. And during that time, just do a job that you can keep alive with, but at the same time, make these connections with people that you're meeting, like do these free mixes, or go to a live show and offer to record it for them, and start making these relationships. It takes around 2 years in Los Angeles for people to start trusting you. And then they think of you when it's like, oh, we need someone to come down and record this. Okay. They're going to have you in their contacts list to call. So to be sure and have patience. And as a woman, you got to kind of let things roll off your back. Don't be too oversensitive. Actually, anybody getting into this, just don't take things personally. Don't be too sensitive or easily offended, because people are just, they're people, and they just sometimes are rude, and they're not really paying attention to how you feel about something. So just let it roll off your back. And the other thing is, if you're going to Nashville, in fact, it takes longer to gain that trust. My understanding, and I've not lived in Nashville, but I have friends from Los Angeles that made the trip to Nashville, and I talked to them about, how long did it take you to start getting calls, and for them, they said 4 years, 4 to 5 years to get into that very tight knit community in Nashville, as opposed to Los Angeles, which is more welcoming. I think you'll start sooner, but it won't happen immediately. You just got to realize that it's going to be a long road, and you might be very hungry for a while. But once you get one hit, everything's okay from there on out, and you can make a shit ton of money. But you can't really go into it with that in mind. You got to kind of do it because you love doing it. And again, specialize in one particular thing. Other things that are very valuable are knowing how to compose or program sampled instruments. Like if you can do beats and you're really good at it, then you're going to get a lot more work than other people. Like even for what I do today, I have a handful of people that I'll call on to help me out with projects, because they have experience and they can put together like an arrangement with a drum machine, drum machine sounds. So we can start building a song recording on that skeleton. And it's really important to have those skills. Boy, if you have that skill and you can put together arrangements with sampled instruments, then you're extremely valuable. So keep those things in mind. Another very helpful person in the studio is anyone who plays drums, even if it's, you know, and I think everyone who's recording music needs to learn how to play drums. And it sounds crazy, but if you know where, you know, where the drummer's hands are going to be and where the snare needs to be as opposed to the hi-hat and the floor toms, it's like that will help you in how you record so much that it'll surprise you. And I forced myself to play drums. I love playing drums now. I'm not that good at it, but I am a great drum recordist. And it's because I know how to tune the drums. I learned and I know how to tune them so that they're perfect. And the recordings always come out fantastic. So there's a whole bunch of stuff to chew on anyway. Thanks for the question.
Thank you so much. Okay, another question from a professor here at IU, Jamie Tagg. He says, thanks so much for being here. One of the things I love about you and your approach to audio is your obvious and infectious enthusiasm for the art, process, and here equipment. I find that young engineers aren't very enthusiastic about equipment. Could you speak about why you think these mics and or other hardware in general is so important to you?
Wow. Well, incredibly, you don't have to have a lot of money to make great recordings with microphones because if you just have a couple 57s, a couple 58s, and Sennheiser 421s, and maybe some kind of nice condenser like the Shure, like this guy here. And these aren't that expensive, right? This is a Shure SM81, right? Pencil condenser. So if you have that, you can record anything, really. It's not, you can use the SM58 for vocals. You can use the 57s for guitars, for snare, for drums, the 421s for bass, for kick drum, and the SM81s for acoustic guitar. So it's, you don't have to be passionate about the equipment, but you do need to be passionate about the music. And if you love what you do in recording music, then every day is a joy. You know, it's just you'll be the luckiest person on earth because you're doing something that you love. And there's nothing better than making music. And I get to be a part of all my clients' bands. Basically, I'm a band member for a while, you know, so I get to be a part of that for the time that we're working together. Sometimes I'll do a project. Sometimes it'll take 2 months or 6 months even. And then we really get to know each other. Or it might be just like 4 days or even 2 days. And we also will be communicating and really learn what makes us tick. And it's a very delicate thing too, to be a friend of a musician for that time, because music is really like a lot of times it's just like exposing their soul in a way. And so you have to be very careful with that, you know, and be delicate with it. But that's such a treasured thing to be a part of someone's life like that. I love what I do. It's sometimes, you know, I get bored using those same old mics over and over again. So now I have, you know, mics that will keep me busy for the rest of my life. But you can also just take the same recipe or the same ingredients and make a whole new recipe. When I think of like Mexican food, okay, there's beans, there's rice, there's cheese, you know, it's like, okay, but you can make a burrito or you can make a taco or, you know, like quesadilla. So that it's the same ingredients, you just try something new. So what I do with every session is I try to create some kind of event that everyone can look forward to, that is an adventure, and I call it adventure recording. So I start a project, okay, we're going to record 3 songs, and then I'll say, okay, at the end of our time that we have scheduled, if we have time at the end and we've done all the rest of the recording, then let's go up to the railroad tunnel and we'll set up in the railroad tunnel and make sure that the train is on its way so that we can record you playing and then running for your lives. You know, like we'll do something insane like that, that everyone will be like, oh, stoked to get all their tracks done so we can go up to the train tunnel, you know, and do this crazy thing and video it and then post it, you know. And so even if the actual recording in the train tunnel is shit, it's like it doesn't matter. It's because we've bonded on this thing and we're making it into something incredibly fun. And heck, I'm not going to use expensive mics up there in the tunnel either. I'm going to use my 57s and my 58s, you know, and then I have a little portable pack that I bring for this kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, make every session an adventure. You'll never get bored. And it's nice to have nice equipment, but it's not necessary. You know, if anyone is going to spend money on anything, I would say spend money on a good quality mic preamplifier, and then you can use cheap mics and they sound great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do you have time for more questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, awesome. I'll give you a couple more then. Another student here from IU, Michael Sears, he's asking, what do you foresee the future of microphone technology being?
Yeah, well, one of the newer technologies, which isn't actually really changing the technology that is already there, but modeling mics, right? So basically a modeling mic is a condenser mic, like a very generic condenser mic. Now Slate makes one, Thompson Labs makes one, Antelope makes one. And what you do is you use that mic without any compression or anything. You just record it kind of flat onto a track. And then when you play it back, you can change the character of that mic so that it sounds like a U47 or a Telefunken 251 or an M49, all those really expensive mics that are impossible to purchase because they're just way out of price range. You can get that kind of sound with the modeling mic. And so it's a cool thing. I like that technology, and some of it is really good. But other than that, I'm not seeing any real new types of technology. We're working actually on a project with what is it, Princeton? Yeah. And the university has a program to reintroduce old technologies. So there's some technologies from the 30s, microphone technologies that were basically very dangerous at the time. And they want to revisit these designs and just make them not dangerous, right? One is like a plasma microphone, which has 2 electrodes in it, and you run an electrical pulse across electrodes, and then as you speak into the mic, you're moving that little electrical spark. It's super dangerous, and it emits ozone. But they want to recreate this thing, and who knows if we can make it so it's not toxic. You might be able to buy one in the future. You know, it's not really new technology, but yeah, and you know, I think that there's still much to learn and much to invent. And when I think of like this original Alexander Graham Bell design, I just think, how crazy is it that it's just a little membrane here, like a drum head, and with a little pin on it that catches the vibrations. It's that you can make one of these actually with a drum head. I think you could, like a drum head and an old phonograph needle. And this is something, I want to try this, but I haven't quite had the time to try that idea. Plus all the other things that you could use for a diaphragm for a different type of microphone. So yeah, there's plenty that could happen in the future. And so yeah, start trying to build something. I'll try it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question, guest from Mexico. What is your advice on young students who are starting their own recording studios?
Ooh, well, you're very brave, and I admire you because having your own studio is a really good thing. Be careful about a few things. Overhead is dangerous. Overhead meaning the cost of using your space. So, because I've had many studios now, and the most successful studios that I had were ones where I purchased the property, I bought the building, and then every time I would pay a monthly mortgage, I was investing in the studio. Basically, it wasn't like I was handing this money to someone else for rent. So I think a mistake that people make in starting studios is that they don't own the property and they pay so much for a good space. And you need space, you need a high ceiling, warehouse type space. But the studio that I'm in now, which we're purchasing the building, is an old garage. It's an old auto garage where they used to have auto lifts to lift the cars. So the ceiling's pretty high, and it was kind of a building that was not too big, like a giant warehouse. So it was a fairly good price. It's in a good area. So overhead it's very important to watch your overhead, and that's just a practical thing about owning studios, that if you have low overhead, then you don't have to run on the treadmill every day. You can have fun, and you don't have to work on projects that you don't like. It's like if you are very careful with how you handle the money, then you'll be much better off. That's just a practical thing. But yeah, I admire you for starting a studio. Do it. Definitely.
Awesome. Okay. Just a couple more questions and then we're probably going to wrap it up. But
Okay.
we have a question here. How do you choose a microphone for a session?
It depends on what I'm doing with that, what I need to use it for. Oftentimes with sessions, I'll need a pair of mics that are matched. So that will limit my choices. Like I want to have 2 matched room mics for drums, or I want to have 2 matched mics for cymbals up above. So matched pairs are very important. So I have 2 of these Shure SM81s, which I use sometimes for overhead, sometimes for hat and ride on the drums. So a pair of good quality condensers is very important. And then it really depends on where we're recording to. Like if we're recording outside, then I'll use less expensive mics, and I won't risk damaging something like that Soyuz, that really expensive mic, or any of these vintage mics. Like I don't want to hurt any of these things. But so I'm going to use, my 57s and 58s and maybe some other unusual, but not expensive and not delicate mics, mostly dynamics outside. Then there's mics that do a certain thing that I need for drums. The mics that handle a lot of SPL and transients. So dynamic mics will be good for recording drums. The toms, the snare, the kick drum, all of them need to be able to take that pressure. So dynamic mics are good for that. And so I generally will always pull 421 for the kick drum, an SM57 on the top of the snare, another SM57 on the bottom of the snare, and then I have them pointing at each other, and then I flip the bottom one out of phase. And the same thing with the toms. I'll put a small, like either a SM57 on the top and a Sennheiser 421 on the bottom, and again have them pointing at each other, and then flip the bottom one out of phase. Then you get the attack from the top mic, and you get the body of the drum from the bottom mic. And for vocals, it really depends on the type of music. So for a singer like Tom Petty, I would use an SM50. I would use a U47, like the very expensive German, beautiful U47, and he would sing in it, and he would stand in front of the hanging mic and with the pop filter, and he would know how to sing into that. But for Tool, when I was working with Maynard James Keenan, he was the best when he was holding a microphone in his hand, and you can't do that with one of these expensive Neumanns, right? So we gave him it was a AKG C1000, which is a really inexpensive but good condenser mic with a battery in it, and we wrapped it up with foam, and then he would sing into that, so he could lean over, because when he sings, Maynard is like this. He's singing into the ground, right? He's yelling at the floor. So that way he could get all the energy into his performance, and we could have a good quality recording. Now that the same thing happened with Smashing Pumpkins, but it was like we put up all the mics in a row. We put up all the expensive ones. We had a Telefunken 251, we had a U47, we had the M49, we had a U87, all these German mics that are just so priceless. And then we just put up an SM57, a Shure SM57, and an SM58. And we had Billy Corgan sing the same verse in each one of those mics, 10 different mics. And then we blindfolded the listening of those. So we didn't know what mic we were listening to back, and we listened to all 10 in a different order. And everyone picked the mic that they liked the best, and it was in fact the SM58. So yeah, after all that, it's like you can get great vocals out of a SM58. It really makes a difference on what kind of mic pre you're using, though. So when I choose mics, it's generally like, okay, what kind of music is it? How does the singer use a microphone? And would it be better for them to have a handheld? And if there is live drums, then I'm going to use a certain amount of dynamic mics for that. But, if we're really digging deep into vocals, I'll pull some of these old ribbons out, because these are just gorgeous, especially for a female voice, because they add that depth that sometimes is missing with other condenser mics. So I think that covers it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Was there anything else that you wanted to go over while we have you?
Oh, man. Well, I'm opening up a shop, and it's going to feature a lot of microphones that are surplus from the Paquette collection. It's not up and running quite yet, but you can visit it and maybe get on the mailing list so that you'll know when we add more stuff, because there's so much to sell. Oh my God. And the memorabilia is quite stunning. There's all original master tapes from Tool, from System of a Down, from Johnny Cash, from Prince. These are like original freaking digital tapes, and it's crazy. I mean, it's like the stuff's not cheap, but there is a bunch of microphones there that are good prices. But it's going to be a great shop. It's you can find it at shop.sylviamassy.com. So come and visit, and in a few days it'll be up and running, and we'll be able to sell and ship whatever you like there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you
Yeah.
to our attendees on Zoom and on the live stream. It was really, really great, and I'm sure that they all appreciated it very much.
Well, I appreciate everyone coming out for this, and just make sure all your recordings are adventures. Just don't be shy and don't be lazy. All right, you guys, it's been a pleasure.